You know, I mean, I know how you're going to challenge me, and then I know how I'm going to answer. So I'm not going to play that way. We'll talk about something else, more interesting and better for the species than that debate. So let me try to connect now my remarks about Nietzsche's so-called perspectivism, his so-called relativism, both of which I have rejected as ways of approaching him, and discuss what I do think is an important insight of Nietzsche's, and that's his denial that facts can determine our interpretations. In fact, Nietzsche suggests over and over again, and this is a very similar claim to the one we have just discussed. Just as we discussed that truth and lie are somehow constructed rather than found. In other words, truths are constructed, not found like nuggets of gold in nature. In the same way, we don't decide between competing interpretations on the basis of bare facts for Nietzsche either. It's a very important point. The bare facts cannot make us decide between two interpretations. Let me try to give a quasi-scientific example, and then I'll try to make Nietzsche's position clear in another way. The quasi-scientific example is this. Many of you are familiar with the cultural dispute between evolutionary biologists and creationists. Those are two radically different theories about the origin of the human species. I think you'd all agree to that, right? Two radically different theories about the origin of human species. Now, how in the name of God could you settle that one with the facts? Because those theories, as it were, are interpretations that construct what you will count as a fact. What gets to count as a fact is going to have to count as a fact within the framework of that theory. So, for example, and this cuts both ways. I'm not in here to bash creationists. I don't even think there is such a thing as creation science. It's oxymoronic to me, but I'm not going to pursue that. I just want to use this example for a moment. What possible counter-evidence could convince a creationist that the world wasn't God's creation? Could you find some special uncreated thing and hand it to them? And go, this is uncreated. See, here's a fact. Your theory's wrong. No, because whatever you find, if it's a dinosaur track, and they want to argue that, you know, God created everything just like it is, and here's this dinosaur track, and they've got no other explanation. I've even heard people say that the devil put them there to fool us. You see, because facts can't overthrow a view like that. Do you follow me? Because the interpretation sets the context for what's going to count as a fact. Now, I'm not going to get the evolutionary biologists off the hook here either, because if they run across a duck-billed platypus, and you've got all these evolutionary trees and stories, and this damn thing, you know, it doesn't walk like a duck and quack like a duck. It quacks like a duck. It has a tail like a beaver, and it swims like a fish, lays eggs like flies, and all this crap. And they just go, oh, here's its branch. That's the same thing, don't you see? The theory's got to put it somewhere. It goes there. But that's just the same thing as the creationist with the thing. You know? I mean, the theory, the interpretation is going to construct what will count as a fact within that interpretation. Now, this is not the strong argument that there are no facts. You see, that's a dumb, again, if you argue this at this point with many philosophers, they're going to say, oh, well, then you don't believe in facts. No, I don't believe in bare facts, things we bump into the world without any notion of what they are at all that decide what we ought to think. There aren't any such things. Because the reason there aren't is because we are socialized into communities, we learn to speak languages, and along with that process come many semi-articulated theories we've already developed by the time we're 6. You'd have to be almost a child to be close to the realm of bare facts. You know what I mean? It would not show that you were developed, mature, or intelligent. It would just show that you were so stupid or so not that children are stupid. Actually, they're young, pretty, and all that stuff. I got a lot of them. They're also irritating. But anyway, that wouldn't show that there are bare facts. If you think there are bare facts, it just shows how poverty-stricken your imagination is in the number of theories you hold about the world. Because if you hold a reasonable number of them, and all of us do, whether we can articulate them or not. In fact, you know, one of the most insidious forms of interpretations are the ones about which we have forgotten, as Nietzsche, to paraphrase Nietzsche, that they are interpretations. We now think that that's just the way it is. But no, facts come to us, and they do come to us, through the nets of interpretation. Through the nets of interpretation. And facts do not overthrow interpretations directly. Enough facts within your interpretation can wear it out in a certain way. In other words, certain interpretations can sort of outlive their usefulness for life, for the species, can become unfortunate ways to continue to interpret. This process, however, is not itself rationally discussable. By that I mean there's no scientific account of that. It just happens. I mean, it just happens that there was an Egyptian religion that was around for what, 2,000 or 3,000 years, and today no one believes it. That Christianity's been around a long time, and in 1,000 years no one may believe it. Because like with individual human lives, with planets, with nations, with religions, with gods, with whole universes, they just wear out and go away. And as the poet Yeats once said, human beings are in love, and they are in love with what vanishes, which I think is a beautiful sentiment for Nietzsche, to be in love with what vanishes. In any case, on all 3 points, Nietzsche has many interesting things to say. I don't want to just read them seriatim. I want to try to reconstruct and gloss them for you. Many interesting things to say on the construction of truth as fictions. And I don't want you to take that in this strong sense. They're just made up. No. Truths as the products of communities, things that it was good for life that we believe, in short. Interpretations as our topic of discussion rather than the facts which are constructed by them. And then I also, during this lecture, wanted to lay to rest some of your doubts about, well, is this relativism or perspectivism or any view is as good as any other view? And if you believe this, won't you start building universities that instead of Shakespeare and Milton, you'll have articles like Jane Austen, the masturbating girl? It's one that it's always quoted in the press as an example of one of these new feminist, deconstructive, deconstruction feminist, relativist, Marxist, neo-wild things that's going on at all the universities, corrupting all your children. Aren't you scared? Hell, aren't you scared? I wouldn't be. I wouldn't be. The challenge to traditional interpretations is itself a tradition built into our tradition. To be absolutely ruthlessly critical is a tradition built into our tradition.